Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to episode number 30 of the P.W.P sessions. That's the Poets for Purpose sessions. I am your host, Noelle Figueroa, aka the Poet, aka the Anointed Pen. Thank you all so much for joining me this evening. Tonight, I'm honored and I'm grateful to be able to connect with yet another awesome poet by the name of Jaquair Gillette, and I'm looking forward to diving into this conversation this evening. So at this moment, I'm going to give a brief introduction before we dive into the interview. So this is episode 30. And for those that are not familiar with this podcast, the Poets for Purpose sessions, or the P.W.P sessions, is a podcast that I created to interview new or established authors of poetry and give them an opportunity to perform their poetry and have a Q&A session at the end of the towards the end of the podcast episode. I'm your host, Noelle Figueroa. I am a poet, author, blogger, workshop facilitator, and event host, and I am the creator of the P.W.P sessions. And tonight's guest is Jaquair Gillette, and here's his bio. Jaquair is an actor, published poet, and a producer. He is a 3-time featured poet at the legendary New Eurekan Poets Cafe and has performed all across the US in cafes and poetry houses from New York City to Los Angeles. He is also an annual open mic host at the Paterson Poetry Festival. In addition to starring in, co-writing, and co-producing the festival award-winning film third and fourth chapters, he has performed in featured roles on Orange is the New Black, Godfather of Harlem, Tommy, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and Law and Order, Organized Crime. Jaquair continues to stay active in his hometown as performs food justice work at Paterson's Greenacre Community Garden, where he is a co-founding committee member. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here's tonight's guest, Jaquair Gillette. Hey, Jaquair, good evening. How you doing tonight?
Hey, the anointed poet. What's going on, man?
Awesome, man. Awesome, man. How you doing, man? Glad to connect with you tonight.
Likewise, man. It's always good seeing you. Just been a busy day.
I hear that, man. Well, thank you for taking time to be interviewed tonight. I appreciate your time, man. I'm glad to have you on the show.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you, for this, for being able to share this time and space. I'm just truly humble and appreciate the opportunity, and just being a part of this awesome podcast. I was watching the other ones, with Mega Sood and with James Ellaby, man, and they're just amazing poets. So just kudos to you, man, and the work that you're doing, and then your work. And for those who don't know, listen, this guy here, when he's at this place, the Paterson Poetry Festival, lays it down.
All right, awesome, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yes, definitely plug the Paterson Poetry Festival, because that was definitely on point. For those that don't know, I attended for the first time last year in 2021, and spectacular from start to finish. And I plan on being in attendance this year without a doubt.
Yes, we look forward to it. Yes, October, the first weekend of October. I think it's October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We will be out there in Paterson at the Courthouse Plaza in Paterson, New Jersey. Yes. So all poets, artists, or people who just love, who wants to experience the arts and culture, please come out to that. It's gonna be awesome.
Excellent. Absolutely. So I want to start off with a basic question that I ask all my guests. Who is Jaquair Gillette? How would you describe yourself or define yourself?
Wow. I would say Jaquair Gillette is just a simple artist who's a person who's a co-creator of stories that show the beauty and truth of humanity and its possibilities, and someone who invests in dreams and ideas.
That's what's up. Now, everybody has their own background and start, as in terms of how they got into poetry. Like, how would you describe your beginnings in the poetry scene? Like, what got you started?
Wow. I would have to say, I always had the influences, from, I guess, honestly, I would say it started with hip hop, you know, like, I don't know if y'all can see, but, Illmatic.
Yes, yes, classic,
Exactly, classic
classic.
writer. So
Yeah.
like my influences started with both, with hip hop and then but also poets, like I remember being a kid, reading like poetry from Langston Hughes, even in other poets, even people like Paul Laurence Dunbar and Maya Angelou and Nikki Giovanni, like this and the late great Gil Scott Heron, just reading their work. So the interest, I think it started there, but I personally didn't start. I think, well, besides like a little kid doing, school assignment, with the right creative writing, write your poem. The first time that I really crafted a poem, it was in high school, and it was actually my English teacher, Miss Decker. She we had a creative writing exercise, and she was, and she was like, I want you to do, she said you could do poetry, you could do essay, and I did a poem. And she sat down next to me and she's like, okay, I want to see what you did. And I recited it to her, and she literally said, I want you to get up. Get up right now. And I was like, what? I'm thinking I'm in trouble. I'm like, what?
Right.
Like, like what I do? Like, no. She's like,
Right.
no, you need to say this in front of your class right now. And I was like, okay. So I got up, and that was the first time I ever like said a poem in front of people. And that was with my peers, and that was Miss Decker's English class.
Wow, that's what's up. Do you recall exactly what that poem was about?
Yes, it was a little bit. I remember the title. It was called the Demographics,
Mhm.
and it was about my. I think I based it on somewhat of my hometown because I just seeing like how I think it dealt, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like it dealt with like the change of the demographics of like dealing with like white flight and like the community being like the resources being taken out,
Mhm.
because of it. I think it dealt with grad. I think it was called, and but I remember the title. For some reason, the title always stuck with me. Was the demographics.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Now, like in your early beginnings of developing your poetry, your writing style and what have you, do you recall like what subjects that you started writing about?
Yes, it was. I would say it was. Sorry, it was more so socially. I think because it started with that poem, the demographics. So I think I felt I was on this socially conscious trend because the next poem after that I wrote was entitled "The De Facto," and I believe I wrote it, if I'm not mistaken, my freshman year of college because I had in my social issues class. I had to do it was my we had to do it. The 10-page paper was due at the end of the semester, and we had to pick a social issue something. And I picked de facto segregation,
Mm.
which is like for those who don't know, you have de jure segregation and you have de facto segregation. De jure segregation is segregation that is enforced by law, which is what we had in America, or like it's in South Africa when they had apartheid, like that's forced by law. Whereas de facto segregation was segregation that quote unquote just happened. Like it wasn't enforced by law, but it just happened, so to speak. And I did a whole 10-page paper on it and just seeing how deep, like, how racism is actually in both, whether it's by law or it's by de facto because of the systems in the society, how it further perpetuated it. So I started going in, yeah. So it was like it started with those two poems. That direction was going into socially conscious, and then when I got into to college, I started branching off a little more and started trying to explore different types of poetry.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. What was your motivation to begin writing in general, and like diving into that subject matter that you're speaking on? Like, what was your motivation to write, and what motivated you to touch on poetry, to write poetry that touches on social matters?
Yeah. It was a combination of things. I think it was I felt that because I would say I'm fortunate enough to like have, was brought up in the in the area and in a household and at a time where there was a consciousness, like there was a Black consciousness. Like I still remember, I'm still old and yet young enough to
Mhm.
remember, like even when like with hip hop and even like the Black arts movement of like the early to mid 90s, where you had to have like 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 you still had people, you had socialist conscious hip hop that was still also it was a great balance, just with that. And then also you had the films, like, you had people like Spike Lee, you had, the Hughes brothers, you had Melvin Van Peebles, you had, John Singleton, who were
Right.
doing movies, like I remember being a kid watching Malcolm X, watching Melvin Van Peebles, the Black Panther movie, Panther,
Mhm.
which most people don't even know that he did a movie about the Black Panthers. And I
Right.
remember seeing that as a kid, it just blew my mind. And then, so growing up from a culture where I was ingesting that kind of art, and then also, in my family and in my community, a lot of people were part of the 5% nation of the gods and earths. So they always taught us about, knowledge of self, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And so I had that foundation. So as I was getting older and growing up in the society, I felt more strongly that I could understand and relate more so to the issues because I saw how they were really affecting our community, how they're affecting me personally, but also affecting, people who I knew, who I love, who I grew up with. And it's like when one becomes educated about the society that they're in, they start to examine it, they start to analyze it, and seeing what kind of effects that it had on them. So for me, that's where it really like that type of poetry really clinged on to me, just given that background, and then me growing up in the society, seeing things. And even when I went to college, I was joining organizations like matter of fact, right here, like BMAD, which stands for Brothers Making a Difference. And joining the organization African Unity, becoming a member of Ebony Women for Social Change to support the sisters, and being a part of the Black Student Union. So I was, we was in that consciousness, that vein. So my art was reflecting things that we were doing.
Yeah, that's what's up. And I think that's the mission of all of us poets in general, to reflect the times and to reflect um the culture as well. Wasn't it Nina Simone that said, the artist has a responsibility
To
to
reflect
reflect
the time.
the time. So I think as poets, we have that same mission, regardless of what subjects we choose to write about. I think it's all the same mission to a degree at the end of the day.
No, absolutely, absolutely, yes. That's one of my favorite quotes from the late great Nina Simone.
Mhm. That's what's up.
Yeah.
Now, who or what would you give credit to as helping you to develop your skills as a writer?
Um, Man, I got, you know what? I would have to say, honestly, it was my guys, who my BMAT brothers, like my brother TJ Gillis, my brother Monty Williams, because that's what we were doing. We were throwing events like BMAT Unplugged, which was like we had a like a cafe on our campus where we were doing spoken word poetry. And just like being around them, and we just would just talk about about words, about lyrics, about and even from different poems, or like from different artists, like and they just encouraged me to just to try to to get better, but I started learning about the different forms of poetry, my senior year of high school. I started learning about what sonnets were, which William Shakespeare wrote so many of. I only wrote one. He wrote
Mhm.
like 100 or something.
Right, right.
Yeah, I was like, I think it's hard when you really realize the structure of how it is.
Yeah.
Learn about that style of poetry, learn about haikus, and then so like I started to learn the craft, then, And then as all the way up until today, then I started learning about, you know, lyric poetry, blues poetry, which influenced the blues,
Mhm.
which, like that's what created blues music, which then would create R&B, which would create rock and roll, like you see the pattern, you see where it all comes from, and even jazz poetry, which is poetry that the late great Langston Hughes did.
Right.
So, that was the, just but being with my guys, that really like they just helped me to want to be better, and just to continue just to write and just to write, what we were saying earlier, write about the times that we are in, but the things that we felt passionate about as well.
Yeah, that's what's up. Absolutely. Now, did you already put out a book, or were you in the process of working on a book, if I'm not mistaken?
Well, this I guess is a shameless plug, but Defiance and Desperation is in stores now.
Yes, yes, that's what's up.
Yes, it is in stores. Yes, my debut spoken word poetry book is it's in stores. It's been just a true labor of love. It's something that some of these poems were poems that I wrote, years ago, and were performing in different places, and I started feeling the reaction, and I was like, okay, I may have something here. So, I try to workshop poems sometimes while I'm like in performing. And so that's what happened. And some of these poems I workshopped, and then a lot of some of the other ones I wrote. The fact that I finished it probably during this pandemic.
Wow,
I
that's what's up,
finished
man.
it during this pandemic.
Congratulations. That's an
Thank you. I
awesome
appreciate that.
accomplishment.
Yes, it's been a labor of love, and I'm rolling this project out. I started with a book. It came out in November, actually November 19th. And then I actually just recently released a documentary that's on YouTube entitled The Defiance and Desperation Documentary Performance, because on the release of my book, I gave a performance. I did a couple of the poems from the book, and we had it at the Patterson Museum in my hometown, and I was interviewed by the great Queen Talina Lachelle, who was a poet laureate for the city of Patterson. So she
Yes.
gave me that honor and interviewed me about with the book and everything, and I performed some of the poems. So got the book, the documentary, and then I think next I'm feeling that I'm gonna do something like digital with it, like an album. So
Yeah, that's what's up, man. Congratulations.
I appreciate that, man. It means a lot.
What route did you take? Would you consider this project self-published, or did you go through a publisher?
No, actually, it's self-published, but I went through a distributor. Yeah, I did. I self-published through a distributor, and it's because I was gonna do a publisher, but I was just like, what? Let me do this one independent. Let me, like, and just go from there, because when you start looking into, especially like with the financials of it, and like with royalties and stuff like that, and I was just like, what? I rather, like, I want to bet on myself. I want to like actually
Mhm.
create this work and just put it out there. And that's why now, and it's in every single online digital bookstore except Amazon. And
Wow.
part of the reason why, and no offense to those who have books on Amazon, just want to be
Mhm.
clear. No offense to those who have books on Amazon. For
Right.
me personally, the reason why I didn't, is two reasons why I didn't want to do Amazon. First reason, while I was writing the book, was during the time, when I was hearing we was hearing the news about all these things that Amazon was doing to their workers.
Mhm.
So I wanted to show worker solidarity. And second, it was because I started looking at I was reading this book by William Dereskowitz called The Death of the Artists, and
Mhm.
how artists are faring in the age of big tech and billionaires.
Mhm.
And he and that put me on the track to look more into the financials of, okay, well, how do Amazon really treat their authors? And I personally just did not like what they were doing with, like how they were treating their authors when it comes to like royalties, like how much percentage they were taking. And I was just like, what? Like, it just felt like, I'm like, what is this? Like, this was like a plantation. Like, what? No, I'm not gonna. So that's the
Right.
reason why. Yeah, that's the reason why I didn't do that, personally. But those two reasons, the reason why I didn't. I was like, I'm not gonna do business with Amazon.
Right, right. That's what's up. I mean, I totally feel you on that, because I went the self-publishing route myself, and there's more work, but then you get more of the reward as far as the finances are concerned, and the fact that you control who your audience is, so it's
Yes.
you have greater control of how you want to present yourself and what you want to say. So either way has its pluses and minuses, but I think it's more rewarding, me personally, when you say you did something yourself, So that's definitely an accomplishment to be proud of. Can you share like what that process was like for you putting together the book from start to finish?
Yeah, sure. After well, I had actually, it's funny because I actually, and this happens, for those who don't know when it comes to art to writers, sometimes even, writers, we get writer's block,
Hmm.
like there's days I'm like, I don't feel like writing, I can't. And I was trying to finish this book and I just had this writer's block and it was just bothering me. So I was like, listen, if I really want to do this book, I gotta so I kind of pushed myself. So I ended up going to Jersey City, just hanging out in Jersey City, by the waterfront. And I started getting the inspiration, just like the energy of just the people around and looking at New York City all lit up at night and everything. And so it actually helped me to, finish with the book. So I did that. Once I finished the book, then and then that's when I did my research. So I was looking into my goodness, I can't think of it. Was I narrowed it down to two distributors that I was gonna go with.
Hmm.
And it's funny because now they're becoming one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're becoming one. And that I can't think of for some reason the first name of the first one it slipped my mind, but I just really know they recently got bought out because the second one who I went with was Draft to Digital,
Hmm.
and they helped you with like, okay, you can, like, once after I finished copywriting my book, copywrote it, and then uploaded it to with the distributor, and then they helped me format it, picked a different format and style that I wanted it for the poems. And for the cover, I always had this image. I linked up with my guy, Jake Yilmaz, who's also a graphic designer. Like, I did a little graphic design, but like I sent him like a little draft, but he's way more of a professional than I am. So
Hmm.
I sent him a draft, and then he was like, okay. He's like, yeah, I could work with this. And he helped me. We did it, and I was like, this is exactly what I want. I said, this is it right here. I said, I want to move this here, and so we knocked that out. And then there's a couple of pictures that I had took just to kind of like help with. I felt like to describe what some of the poems were, were about, so to speak. I did like three pictures, and one of them came from a friend of mine, my friend Rosa Tulitsalan. She she took a photo of me when we went camping up in Indian Lake. So I was like, I love this photo. So I was like, I asked, I got the permission and everything, and she granted it. And I said, thank you so much. So I put that in there. And so once I did all that, uploaded it, drafted digital, they helped me select. They helped me with the pricing because I did my research on the range of pricing. Like, because you got to take all that in consideration. Like what kind of what kind of pricing you want, what the market is actually commanding. You got to take all that in consideration. So I settled on this price for this body of work, and then once I uploaded it, I select a release date, and then that was it. And then I started formulating the whole, publicity plan. I took a publicity class with a publicist, and he helped me learn how to do an actual press release and all of that. So yeah,
That's what's up, man. That's
labor of
what's up.
love.
Yeah, no doubt, man. That's an awesome accomplishment. What can readers expect when they go through your book? Like, what does the book have a particular theme, or was it like miscellaneous? Is it like a miscellaneous collection of poetry? Like, how would you describe this project?
Yeah, this body of work, it's a it's a collection that that not only does it shows the, how can I say, it's in the vein of it highlights the plights and the struggles of marginalized peoples in general, but African Americans in particular. And it's, if I could ever sum up our like not just my individual struggle, but also our struggle as as a people, as a community, but as also as all marginalized peoples in general, the two words that always came to my mind was defiance and desperation.
Mm. Yeah, that's what's up.
So,
That's what's up.
yeah.
Now, is
Why
there
aptly named titled that.
out of all the poetry that you write, do you gravitate to certain subjects more than others? Do you have like a favorite topic, or you just generally write how you feel?
I try to, well, I feel like, my socially conscious like vein, I feel like it's my strongest vein, but I have actually been pursuing, writing more like, love poems and even like comedic poems, like just funny, like different scenarios. So like I've been like flirting with that idea and I was scared to death to do any of those other two, like either doing love poems and doing comedic poems because of the fact that, it's especially with love, it's always, I feel like, it's one of the most beautiful yet toughest subjects to write about, because it takes you to a place,
Right.
like I had to dig deep into feelings on certain poems that, I was like, man, do I really want to go there? And then afterwards I'm sitting there, I'm like, it
Right.
starts bringing you back. But yeah, I would say my socially conscious works is probably much more, is my strong suit. But, the other poems they're coming along.
Right. Awesome, man. Awesome. Now, out of all the poets that you've encountered and like maybe read about, like who would you say inspires you the most?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Man, well, that's a tough one, man. I mean, the most, because I'm like, man, I'm inspired by so many people. Like,
Right.
oh my goodness. Like, I'm
Like
inspired by
who will be like in your top five, like that you can say most definitely like be hitting it with you, like that, like they're that like they're like a must have in your arsenal. You know what I mean?
oh my God. Okay. As much as I want to include hip hop artists, because I'm thinking right there about that man.
Oh, true. Yeah, I
Like,
mean, well, it's technically poetry, so you know what I mean. You can include MCs if you like, you know what I mean, because they're all part of it. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. And see the thing, because like I feel like that's gonna get into a situation where now I'm talking about my top five MCs, and that's why I'm like, I don't think I'm not gonna do that. All right.
Right, right.
So outside of our hip hop artists who are poets, outside of them, I would say whose works always inspire me. Wow, I would say I'm inspired a lot by I've been loving recently. I've been really loving Amanda Gorman's works. I've been
Yes,
loving
yes.
her work. I'm just
Yeah,
like, oh my God. I'm like, if I was like, why was I writing like that at that age? Like, I'm just
yeah.
like, her work. Helena D. Lewis. She's just amazing. Like, ever since I saw her on Def Poetry Jam, like when I was like in high school, it was just, I just been loving her work. I love Queen Talina Lachelle's work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so many poets. Like honestly, like even like when you performed, I was just like, man, I felt like I was like, I was like, man, like I was like, I gotta write better. Like, like I'm
Mhm.
just like I'm inspired by so many different poets. And like that's why I love like there's times where I go to places I don't want to perform. I just want to listen.
Right,
Like as much as I love feeding, I want to be fed.
right. Exactly, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that because that helps. It helps. I see it. That's a way of balancing yourself out. To help. Keep your pen ready. You know what I mean? Because sometimes
Yeah,
it doesn't hurt to just listen. Sometimes, and then sometimes doing that helps you write even more. And even
exactly.
better. To a degree. So there's nothing
Oh
wrong with
yeah,
that at all.
absolutely. Yeah, like matter of fact, I was watching because I remember watching people like Saul Williams perform, or like my man Poet from Oz, like seeing him at the Eureka perform, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I like because like I feel like him he unfortunately he has passed away, but like him in particular, I was like, man, like I was just he just like because when I used to watch probably what shouldn't have been watching Oz at that time, but when I used to watch Oz and watch him perform, it was just like
Mhm.
it really I was like, whoa, I gotta like I was like, that right there, like, if anything, is like, if I'm gonna be a poet, I'm gonna be like that guy. But like
Right.
people like him, and then even recently, my man Uninvited Maine, like I just did a show with him, and I was just like, man, there's just so much great talent.
Yeah, that's fact. That's a fact. Even when I encountered, you and other poets at the poetry festival and other venues I've attended, I'm just grateful to connect with so many poets that provide like endless amounts of inspiration, you know, and everybody's just has the freedom to be themselves through their work. And that's what I like about poetry. Poetry is never bound by one style or one form. It's free to be whatever, say it's your interpretation of
Yep.
what it is. It has no limits, it has no boundaries, it has no, there's no restrictions. It could be tailor made to you.
Exactly.
And there's always going to be people that'll gravitate to that because authenticity and transparency is key when you're a writer, regardless of what you're writing about or what you choose to represent. It's important to be authentic and to be yourself. And that's one of the things I learned when I decide to go about my writing. There's nothing wrong with emulating people or being inspired by other people, but you definitely don't want to lose yourself, when you're writing, trying to be like other people. So
Yeah.
that's one thing I learned, if anything.
Yes, absolutely. Authenticity is key. It is key. Is being true to yourself and what you're writing about. It's
Definitely. Now let's talk about representation, right? The word representation. You've heard that word thrown around in different places and in different circles. Now, when you're talking about yourself and your writing, how important is it to you to make sure that you're representing yourself in your totality, whether you're talking about your race, gender, ethnicity, educational background, religion, if it applies to you, you know, everything that makes you you. How important is it to you that when you write and share your poetry, that you're representing yourself in your totality?
Yeah. I just you know what? I feel like it's more so on a it's probably on a poem by poem basis because like I can write like I could write a poem that man, like it could be about a situation that I seen someone else go through, you know, and you know, I wrote it from looking at it from the universal experience as opposed to me being like the main person who actually experienced it. So it kind of depends. Like other than that though, for most of my work, I feel like you know when it comes to representation, I feel like I have a duty to to try to be accurate as possible to whatever it is that I'm writing about.
Right.
So like if I'm let's say for example, okay, like I wrote a poem about my but actually two friends of mine, they were getting married and they asked me to write them a poem for their wedding and recite it at their wedding.
Right.
No one's ever asked me anything like that. And I'm like, how do I write a poem about about people getting married? I'm not married. I know, like I
Right.
so but I had to do. I felt like I said, okay, John, do your research. You know them, but there's things you don't know about them. As form as like how they met. How did like what was it that they knew? Like what was the day they proposed? And so I got all that information, and then I wrote it. I wanted to write it in a way where I was like, okay, you don't know who wrote it in the sense of he could have wrote it to her or she could have wrote it to him.
Right. Right.
So like in a situation like that, yeah, like me, I'm out of it. I just use my creativity to write it in that way. Whereas if they wanted to recite it, the groom could have said it to the bride, or the bride could have said it to the groom.
Right. That's what's up, man. That's what's up. And that provides the perfect segue to the next portion of this episode. Where now it's time for you, Jaquair,
Okay.
my brother, to take the mic. So at this time, you have an opportunity to share up to 5 poems of your choice. So our audience tonight can get a sense of who you are as a writer and a poet. So at this time, the floor is yours.
Okay. All right. Well, I tell you what, the first poem I wanted to do, with you all is one of the poems from my manuscript, aptly entitled Defiance and Desperation. And in fact, it's the first poem of the book, and it's entitled Defiance. I come before you from the world's congregation, from the souls of folks in the margins of all nations, the throwaway people, the go away people, who you abuse and exploit, the hoe away people, the serfs and the slaves, who work to their graves, whose blood is in the soil in the streets that they paved, whose pain you avoided with the lies you recorded, their hopes, their dreams, their lives you destroyed. You fed them the myths of things that don't exist. You said justice for all, but injustice persists. The heists and the schemes you did by any means, you surgeons of oppression and killers of the dream. But now is the time for all whom to rise. Freedom's march to the promised land, eyes on the prize. A true coalition against this prohibition, injustice, inequity. It all came from a decision to benefit the few at the expense of the many. From race to class, your isms are plenty. It's always been your mantra to divide and to conquer, because the fear in your heart gave birth to a monster. But all is not lost of our crops from this frost. We can save the gardens of humanity at will and at cost. As we stare into the abyss, stare into the mist, darkest days find its hours, our power to resist. But in order to save we, it begins and ends with me, myself, and I, you, and thee. The person in the mirror, seeing things clearer, because there's room for all of us and salvation is nearer. To all of us in this universal trust, as we march in defiance in the duty of our themes, fist raised high as all the saints sing. Power to the people by any means. I had a dream to let freedom ring. Power to the people by any means. I had a dream to let freedom ring. Power to the people by any means. I had a dream to let freedom ring. Power to the people by any means. I had a dream to let freedom ring. All right. Ooh. Defiance. One of my favorites from the book, actually. Wow, trying to think. Okay. Anyway, said I have a couple more. Well, this next piece actually I want to share with you. I want to dedicate this. Whenever I perform this, I dedicate this one actually to all creatives and all artists of all disciplines. For an individual to actually want to live this life and to choose this life, I always commend them, because it has to come from, a place, because there's so much hardship. It's so many things that, even how society looks at it, that affects you. But this piece right here, the second piece that's part of this canon of work, is actually entitled Rebel for Life. Reaching everyone by expressing life, the rebel I am. Inspiring all mankind, yes, I can. From man, woman, and child to child, woman, and man, the world is before us, and this is where we stand. See, we don't do this for the Oscars, Tony Emmys, or the Grammys. We're expressing life for what it is and all that it can be. Producing art that shows the beauty and the truth of humanity, because we've been imprisoned to a status quo, chained to its insanity. This industry's affliction, constant repetition, projects driven by profit-making addictions. It could leave art's existence in an ALS condition. But it's time for a new mission, an ethos, a new vision, a new way of living, an artist's life apparition. You see, the culture of the game as you're addicted to the fame. We should create things that matter from our hearts and our brains. See, now is the time for creativity as divine, to express our true nature, that of a creator. I live forever in that spirit until my last sun set, not past at night. Because I am a rebel for life. Oh, and the death of the artist is from the theft on the artist. Billionaires and big tech, tech was left from the artist. Thank you. Appreciate that. Wow, I'm trying to think of the next one I want to share with you all from Canning work. You know, you know what? It's been a while since I've actually performed this one, so I'm gonna pick this one. You know, with our current, you know, social and political, you know, apparatus, you know, everything that we're dealing in, you know, and the reckoning that we're trying to have, you know, with America, or what, you know, what James Baldwin has said, you know, what we are not dealing with is what we have done. When the moment comes for we, the American people, are trying to forge a new identity where we would need each other. Because up until this point, there is no hope for the American dream, because those who are denied participation in it through their very presence will wreck it. And those words by him, you know, inspired this next, well, and partly inspired this next poem, because with everything that was happening, you know, especially with, you know, with the unfortunate, you know, culture that we had that was waved in, social political culture that was waved in from the previous administration, you know, and all these things that we were seeing, we were happening, that we this with systemic, you know, racism, with you know, with classism, all these different things, you know, the thing that came to my mind was, you know, you're gonna have to pick a side. And that's what this piece aptly entitled is, Pick a Side. And it's from Defiance and Desperation. They've declared war on the multiracial democracy, using the blueprint of the Constitution's hypocrisies, using the tools of whiteness and all its properties, creating division with precision with false dichotomies, rationalizing the lies of their convictions, wearing khakis and ties to hide their positions, claiming nationalism is the description, but it's really white supremacy, different prescription. Behold, the truth is unfold. So what's your decision? Pick a side. Though the lines are clearly defined, I understand the disconnection. See, our country has subsidized ignorance since its inception. Don't fall for Donald or David Duke's language deception. There's no formal alliance, but there's a connection. So let me ask you this question. What's the lesson? Pick a side. Claiming it's just economic anxiety as you lie to me, when there's more so racial resentment dressed in propriety. You believed in the gospel of meritocracy, spoon-fed to you as the truth by the plutocracy, telling you that the others were the problems of this democracy, but really, it's their system of monopoly. Same playbook since the colonial period. You fell for the same con again and again, same group, different man, period. Your indifference to suffering has you suffering, period. You lusted for affluence, and now you're under the influence, period. You blame the victims of a system, and now you're the system's victims, period. Blinded and wedded to the fiction of whiteness, period. Even if democracy ends in fascism, that's serious. Pick a side. We've all inherited this mess. but now it's our time. And the line drawn in the sand will be paid for on our dime. And maybe I should have said this on the first line, but I'm on the side to make America great for everyone for the first time. Pick a side. Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, pick a side, everyone. Pick a side.
You was definitely dropping some gems tonight, man, for real. Lit poetics. Lit poetics for
I
sure.
appreciate it. Yeah. I got room for one more. Is that good? One more is good?
Yeah, you good. You
Okay.
good. Do your thing.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I got one more. This actually is slowly becoming probably one of my favorite poems in the book. I don't know. It's just something about it. But one of the things that I know we talk about in our community a lot is dealing with economics, economic development, and trying to create wealth, whether it be generational wealth. And I wanted to create a piece that dealt with that. But I wanted to share, not just my personal perspective, but from what I have learned from, scholars like, John Kavanaugh and Jerry Mander, who wrote the book, Alternatives to Economic Globalization, as well as, people like, Dr. Claude Anderson with Powernomics. So all this information that, I was, learning, and I was like, you know what? I have something to say about this. And, one of the ways that I feel like, because I don't believe in utopia, but I believe a better world is possible. And I know in our community in particular, economics is one of those pillars to it. So this piece right here that is in Defiance of Desperation is entitled Powernomic Democracy. Better ways to build wealth, to live forever and die free. Spiritually, physically, mentally, and economically. Now, let me break that one down properly. Changing your frame. Going from knowledge to a wise dome, I mean changing your brain to a greater understanding of how to build wealth. Building for the family, community, and self. Collective participation for true powernomics. Being a prosumer with democracy and economics. Controlling your own materials and cultures, in the robbery of your capital from the claws of these vultures. So you don't have to go at it alone. Don't be a loner. Everybody can't be a boss, but they can be an owner. Ownership in the assets in which your lives depend on. Stocks in the companies whose products you spend on. Settling the scores with new business accords. Unionized labor co-chairing the boards. Workers' cooperatives, no plantation operatives or systems, no more dead peasant victims. See, this economy abandons us, subjects and strands us. So let's buy back the blocks with community land trusts, community gardens and community farms, food to the people to fix community harms. Let's explore UBI to level the inequities as long-term investments, not short-term discrepancies. Let's create family clubs of investments. And that could be one of the ways for reparations assessments. But for all lanes of wealth, we must protect what life needs. Global sustainability, rejuvenation of seeds, not for corporate greed, but for life itself to succeed, because there's room for all of us, and all of us can achieve wealth.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Lit Poetics by none other than Jaquair Gillette. Yo, man, the subject matter, the presentation, all of that completely on point. Thank you for coming through, sharing your poetry, man. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure the audience on the line tonight enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
I hope so. I hope I didn't disappoint you all.
Nah, man, you did your thing. No question. No question. Now, at this time, I want to take a few minutes and we're going to jump into our audience Q&A portion of the podcast before we close out for tonight. So if there's anyone in our audience that has a question or a comment that they would like to share with Jaquair, you can unmute yourself at this time and share your question or comment. But you know what? I think I'll start it off. What do you intend to accomplish with your work?
Wow, that's a heavy question. It's something I know as artists we think about, but sometimes you just don't really feel the depths of what is of an upset question. I just hope that my work it reaches people. It has them it has them feel something, and it makes them either want to to change something in their life or to change something in their community, or to try to see how they can be better and how they can make those around them to be better as well. If I could accomplish anything close to that, I'd be thankful.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. All right. Anyone on the line in our audience tonight that want to jump in with a question or a comment before we close out?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Santosh, how are you?
How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
It was wonderful listening to him. So just one question. Where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Wow. 10 years from now. I see myself 10 years from now continuing, to, publish, books of poetry, performing, and also, especially, because I'm an actor, just also doing, great work in film and TV and theater, as an actor, as a writer, and as a producer. In 10 years, yes. So just doing all of that, just continuing to publish and perform, spoken word poetry, but also, in my other craft as an actor, as a writer, as a producer as well.
That's wonderful, and hearty congratulations and all the best. All the best to you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Santosh, for coming through with that. Awesome. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Anyone else in our audience like to share a question or comment before we close out?
No pressure.
It's all good. Actually, I have another one, right? Who would you want to what poet would you want to collaborate with? Now they could be living or deceased. Is there one poet, if you could collaborate with one poet, living or deceased, who would it be and why?
Only one? Oh my goodness.
Well, it could be as many as you like. I'm sure you have at least there's like a top 5.
Top 5. I tell you what, I do this because they're still alive and living. I would love to collaborate with the Last Poets.
Yes.
Would love that. If I could, I mean anything. I don't even care if they did like, listen, just write 4 lines. Okay. I'll give you 4. Right. It'd be the best 4 lines I probably ever would come up with.
that would be epic, no question. That's what's up.
Man, I like that question. That's actually, I'm like, wow, yeah, I'm like dead or alive. I'm like, man, I'm like, because there's so many poets. Like, there's even poets who I'm like, I wish I would have met Langston Hughes like in Harlem and just been hanging out with him and just just like vibing off each other, just listening, just listening at his feet would have been perfect for me. Like, or like just even with Maya Angelou, like I would have loved to just sit here. I'd be like, no, please just continue talking. I'm just listening. Like I just would have.
Yeah, that would definitely be epic, no question. All right. So before we close out, are there any events that you like to? Do you have any events coming up that you want to share, where you're going to be featured at and whatnot? Now, once again, as you mentioned in the beginning of this episode, you mentioned Patterson Poetry Festival.
That is correct.
No doubt, no doubt. Do you have any other events coming up that you would like to share with our audience?
Lined up. Well, because right now I'm working on 2 short films, so they've been taking up most of my time. but I do plan on in August. I know for sure. I want to do something in June and July, but I know for sure in August I'm going to be the last Thursday in August. I will be performing at Prototype, which is in my hometown. It's a arts collective studio, 237 River Street in Paterson, New Jersey, and they have a open night that's hosted by the former poet laureate, my guy, Rashad. He hosts it, and I promised him I was gonna come through and I was gonna perform. So it will definitely be then, for sure. But other than that, yeah, I'm working on these 2 films right now. One is entitled "The American Jungle," the consequences of myths, and I'm just, and the other one is I can't give but details. The only thing I can say is that it's dealing with the immigration issue.
Right.
That's all I can say. So I'm just working on those 2 projects right now. I want to get those in the can. And yeah, I want to, hopefully I get to perform again at the New York Poets Cafe soon,
Yes, most definitely, most definitely. Now, once again, before we close out, can you share again the title of your book and where it's available to be purchased?
Absolutely. The title of my book is Defiance and Desperation. You can purchase it at Barnes and Nobles, at Baker and Taylor. You can Overdrive, Scrib, Kobo. Listen, it's international. It's not. I mean, literally, it's Mandalorian. You can get it from there. You can get it from Biblio, online bookstore, except Amazon. It's the only place where it's not. It's on online bookstore everywhere in all markets that there's online bookstores. Overdrive,
awesome.
Spread, all of it.
That's what's up, man. And congratulations once again on that awesome accomplishment. And where can you be found on social media?
Yes, you can follow me, on Facebook and Twitter at Jaquair, Jaquair. And you can also follow me on Instagram at I am Jaquair, and my website, www.iamjaquair.com. And also, you can check out the documentary. It's on YouTube, Defiance and Desperation, the documentary performance. You can check that out. You can leave a comment, you can share it. It gives you even more in depth about, some of the poems, and you get to see the interview with me and Queen. So yeah, it's a labor of love. And it's on IMDb, just in case if y'all didn't, if you try to figure out, you could just type in my name, Jaquair. I should come up and you'll see it there as well.
Excellent. Congratulations, bro. Now, as we close out, I just want to share one more screen, because I want to say thank you. First and foremost, Jaquair, I want to thank you for being my guest. Awesome conversation and definitely awesome poetry. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking time out to share on this episode. For those of you that wish to follow Poets with Purpose, you can follow on Facebook through the Facebook group Poets with Purpose, on Twitter @PoetsWPurpose, the YouTube channel of the same name, and also on Clubhouse @The Anointed Pen. Stay tuned for episode 31, which will be featuring poet and author Wakali Words. That's taking place on Thursday, May 19th, 2022 at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, for more information about Poets with Purpose and the P.W.P sessions, you can call me at 646-372-6230, or you can email me at poetswithpurpose@gmail.com. All of my logos and flyers are designed by the awesome team at Eclipse Graphics, New York. You can connect with them on Instagram @EclipseGraphicsNY to see samples of their work and to connect with them if you want to have them do any projects for yourself. And lastly, for those of you that would like to make a donation, you can do so through PayPal, Tap Media Man, $Anointed Pen, or through Zelly using the phone number. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on episode number 30. Jaquair, thank you so much. Thank you to my audience. Thank you all for your support. This episode will be uploaded to the YouTube channel within the next hour or so be on the lookout for that. Once it's available, you'll be able to share it to your own social media networks. Thank you all so much for coming through. Have a good night and God bless. Thank you.
Bless. Peace and love.
Peace.